Buying a cabin in the Colorado mountains was supposed to be my escape from the madness, my reward for surviving a decade of open floor plans, passive-aggressive Slack messages, and the soul-eroding art of pretending I care about Q3 pivot strategies. It was my version of buying a Harley during a midlife crisis, minus the leather and with a lot more pine. I'm Jake, 34, software engineer, and newly minted cabin owner in a place called Pine Ridge, an aggressively charming mountain community nestled 2 hours outside Denver. The cabin was everything HGTV dreams are made of: cedar siding, a real stone fireplace, a wraparound deck that made me feel like a forest wizard, and windows that caught every shade of sunrise like it was trying to seduce me. For 6 glorious months, it was my slice of paradise. I'd come up on weekends, bring a few friends sometimes, and other times just sit on the deck with a beer and pretend I was a man of nature while still checking GitHub issues on my phone. The air was crisp, the stars looked fake in how bright they were, and the bears politely stayed away. Life was good. The HOA? Barely a blip on my radar. I was told it was relaxed. And, sure, there were rules. Keep the place tidy, don't throw parties that'll summon the cops or raccoons, but nothing outrageous. Or so I thought. Enter Brenda Morrison. Brenda is what happens when a failed mall manager discovers the intoxicating power of bylaws. Picture a woman in her mid-50s who walks like she's late to ruin someone's day. Permanent pastel blouse, reading glasses that dangle like she's about to solve a murder mystery, and the kind of perma-smile that screams, "I called the police when kids skateboard too close to my driveway." She first appeared at the annual HOA meeting, the kind of event I only showed up to because I misread the invite and thought there'd be food. Brenda announced her candidacy for HOA president with the kind of seriousness most people reserve for Supreme Court nominations. Her slogan? Bringing order and respectability to Pine Ridge. Because clearly, the most pressing crisis in our sleepy mountain town was my wind chimes clashing with the local ecosystem. I knew I was in trouble when she made eye contact with me, clipboard in hand, like a T-Rex spotting movement. She offered a handshake that felt like a contract with the devil and said, "We'll get Pine Ridge looking shipshape in no time." I should have run. The first red flag came in the form of a certified letter, which already felt aggressive. Who sends certified mail unless they're suing you or inviting you to jury duty? It was a violation notice for, wait for it, unapproved outdoor furniture. Specifically, my Adirondack chairs. The same chairs that were literally there when I bought the place. The same chairs half the neighborhood had in some form. Apparently, Brenda's interpretation of the HOA's rules required all outdoor furniture to be pre-approved by the Architectural Committee. A committee consisting of, wait for it again, Brenda, Brenda's best friend Cheryl, and Cheryl's husband, who hadn't spoken at the last meeting except to mumble whatever she said. I called Brenda, trying to clarify things, thinking maybe there had been a mix-up. Rookie mistake. "Oh no, Jake," she chirped over the phone. "We're just enforcing standards. Pine Ridge needs uniformity to protect property values. We can't have random lawn furniture compromising the visual integrity of the community." Visual integrity. Of my deck. In the woods. Fine. I played along. I submitted the form, paid the absurd $50 review fee. Yes, $50 to have my already existing chairs reviewed, and got my approval. Bureaucratic extortion at its finest. I even received an official letter of compliance signed in pink ink. Charming. I figured that would be the end of it. A harmless power trip, a middle-aged woman on a quest for relevance. Let her have her clipboard and call it a day. Ah, sweet, naive Jake. You poor, dumb optimist. Things escalated faster than a cat spotting a cucumber. The second Brenda got that HOA crown, it was like flipping a switch from mildly annoying to dictator of the decorative gourd aisle. Suddenly, Pine Ridge wasn't a quiet escape. It was her personal SimCity project, and she was playing on God mode. If the first violation was a red flag, the next 3 months were a full-blown communist parade. Brenda had transformed from overzealous neighbor to Pine Ridge's self-appointed compliance czar. Suddenly, it felt like living inside a gated suburb of North HO area. And she wielded her clipboard like a weaponized Bible, smiting whatever dared offend her delicate sensibilities. The first new decree? Revised quiet hours. What were once reasonable 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. hours got stretched like an undercooked pizza to 9 p.m. to 8 a.m. You could barely cough after dark without Brenda peeking through the bushes like a suburban raccoon, armed with decibel charts and moral judgment. Next came the guest parking regulation. Every guest now had to fill out a form requiring more information than most passports. License plate, date of birth, reason for visit. I half expected to submit a urine sample just to let my cousin park for a weekend. My personal breaking point came with the Aesthetic Compliance Initiative. Brenda, in all her divine wisdom, decided that all exterior decor must now reflect the natural pine aesthetic. Sounds harmless, until I got another certified letter. This time it was about my wind chimes. You know, the bronze ones I picked up at a local art fair, crafted by a guy named River. Yes, really. Who lives off-grid and smells like patchouli and mountain air. Brenda's take? They created visual discord. Visual discord. Wind chimes. I wanted to respond with a drawing of a middle finger done in charcoal on birch bark, just to stay within the natural theme. It didn't stop there. Suddenly, Brenda began what she called random property integrity reviews. Translation: unannounced surprise inspections where she'd stroll around with her measuring tape and clipboard, acting like she was on House Hunters, Gestapo edition. She'd critique everything, from the height of your grass, for 0.1 inches is technically non-compliant, to the angle of your deck railings. Once, I caught her measuring the shadow cast by my porch lantern. Light pollution can be a problem for nocturnal wildlife, she said, as if I was personally blinding owls. I asked, are you saying my porch light is killing raccoons? She blinked, clipboard twitching. No, but it could. And that's when I knew I was in a psychological thriller. Starring Brenda Morrison as the clipboard-wielding antagonist and me as the guy trying not to lose his mind in flannel. I started documenting everything. Screenshots of her 2,000-word HOA email rants about garbage can positioning. Audio recordings of her berating another neighbor about siding tone deviations. Photos of her tiptoeing through properties like a nosy elf on a power trip. I shared this stuff with my friends back in Denver, and they laughed. She sounds annoying, they said. No, she wasn't annoying. Annoying is someone who double texts. Brenda was pathological. Then came the piece de resistance. A new letter during a 2-week period when I hadn't been at the cabin. 17 violations. 17. In 14 days. Here are some of my favorites. Unauthorized plant growth. For a few weeds sprouting in my fire pit. Improper window covering angle. Because my blinds were allegedly tilted 3 degrees off the standard. What standard? No one knows. Failure to maintain year-round occupancy standards. A rule that, conveniently, wasn't in any bylaw. But apparently Brenda thought I was required to live there just to be watched like a science experiment. Total fines? $1,247. My actual HOA dues. $85 a month. That's right. She racked up over a year's worth of fines in less than a fortnight. It was like she'd taken a personal sabbatical just to become a full-time nuisance. That's when the light bulb flickered on. This wasn't about rules. It wasn't about preserving community standards. This was personal. It was targeted. It was calculated. And it was time for a software engineer with insomnia and petty tendencies to fight back. Some people bake when they're stressed. Others hit the gym. Me? I dive face first into public databases and start connecting dots that weren't meant to be connected. What Brenda failed to realize, between planning her next front porch raid and rewriting the 10 Commandments as HOA bylaws, was that I work in tech. Which means I'm 1/2 spreadsheet, 1/2 spite, and 100% capable of reverse engineering your life if you so much as piss on my pine cones. So, I started digging. First stop, the county recorder's office. Public records, baby. Beautiful, boring, gloriously transparent public records. And what did I find? Brenda had filed official zoning complaints against 12 separate Pine Ridge properties in the last 8 months. Not just HOA infractions, county-level complaints about unpermitted modifications, zoning inconsistencies, and my personal favorite, hazardous occupancy potential. And guess what? Every single one of those properties had previously received HOA citations. Citations Brenda personally issued. Citations that, in more than one case, had been hotly disputed by the owners. People who, surprise, surprise, ended up selling their cabins not long after. At a discount. Under pressure. Coincidence? Brenda would probably say yes. I say no? But wait, there's more. Of the 3 most recent sales, all went through the same real estate agent, Patricia Morrison. If you're thinking, same last name. Bingo. Brenda's sister-in-law. Turns out the Morrison family isn't just running a tyrannical HOA. They're flipping mountain properties like it's their side hustle. Except, instead of buying low and selling high the old-fashioned way, they were apparently weaponizing Brenda's clipboard to squeeze homeowners out. The more I dug, the uglier it got. Patricia had submitted development proposals to the county under a company called Morrison Mountain Properties. Proposals to expand and revitalize Pine Ridge into a luxury ecotourism retreat. A plan that, surprise again, required acquiring several existing cabins, including mine, of course. So now the playbook was obvious. Drown homeowners in citations, scare them with county complaints, drive down value, then swoop in with a gracious offer to take the property off their hands. It was a small-town mafia in pastel sweaters. But speculation isn't evidence. Courts don't care that Brenda gives you the creeps or that Patricia's business plan smells like predatory gentrification. They want proof. So, I went full Mission Impossible. I installed discrete cameras around my cabin. Motion-activated, cloud-synced, and hidden well enough that not even Brenda's eagle-eye clipboard could spot them. If she wanted to keep playing games, I'd start recording the whole match. And oh boy, did those cameras deliver. Within 2 weeks, I had footage of Brenda entering my cabin. Not on the porch. Not peeking in the windows. No, inside. She used a key I never gave her, wandered around like she was on a guided tour of Jake's stuff. Even paused to sort through my mail. At one point she stood by my fireplace, holding up a throw pillow like it offended her personally. My favorite clip, though, was her standing outside my fire pit with a tape measure, muttering, "Non-compliant. Overbuilt. Definitely exceeds the 30-inch perimeter." Ma'am, it's rocks in a circle. But the key? That was the real kicker. How the hell did she get a key to my cabin? A quick call to the previous owners solved that riddle. Apparently, when they sold the place, they handed over a spare key to the HOA maintenance coordinator for emergency use. A role that, legally speaking, does not exist in the current bylaws. Turns out Brenda had inherited the entire HOA key stash when she took over. And instead of using them for, I don't know, emergencies, she was using them to pop into private properties like she was checking in on her Airbnb portfolio. Legally, that's called breaking and entering. To Brenda, it was probably just proactive community stewardship. Either way, I had her. But I wasn't done yet. No. The engineer in me wanted a full schematic of the operation. And the part of me that watched too many revenge thrillers wanted to see just how far she'd go, just how deep this rabbit hole went. Spoiler, it was about to go deeper than she ever anticipated. 3 weeks after installing my cameras, and 2 days after rewatching Brenda inspect my fire pit like it was a nuclear reactor, I got the call. "Jake? It's Bill, your neighbor. You planning to move?" "Not unless I've sleepwalked into bankruptcy." "What?" "There's a moving truck at your place. People are taking stuff out. Brenda's there too. She said you'd authorized it." I stood in my Denver apartment, phone in hand, blood pressure ricocheting into low Earth orbit. Authorized what exactly? She's telling them to remove personal items for relocation. Says you're being reassigned due to structural hazards or something. Doesn't make sense. She's got paperwork. Paperwork. Of course. "Bill, listen carefully," I said, already grabbing my keys and laptop. "Take photos. Everything. Plates, faces, Brenda's fake Bible of HOA rules. I'll be there in 2 hours." I drove like a man possessed. Well, like a man whose cabin was being burglarized under the pretense of civic duty. By the time I rolled into Pine Ridge, the moving truck was gone. But Brenda's Subaru Outback, of doom, was parked proudly in my driveway, along with two unfamiliar sedans. Porch lights were on. My porch lights. I hadn't left those on. I parked at Bill's, who greeted me with a GoPro in one hand and a beer in the other. "You're not gonna believe this," he said, already chuckling. "She's hosting guests." My brain did a quick somersault. "Guests? In my house?" "Oh yeah," Bill said, trying not to laugh. "She's playing hostess." Gave them a tour, mentioned community-managed properties, poured wine. "She even complimented your furniture." My left eye twitched. I hadn't driven 2 hours with a head full of rage to hear Brenda critique my taste in rugs. I took the path through the woods behind my cabin. My spare key under the deck? Gone. But I had a second one tucked in my wallet, because paranoia and Brenda are best friends. I crept to the back sliding door, the one I'd upgraded myself, and slipped in silently like a homeowner ninja. Voices. Laughter. Clinking glasses. My fireplace glowed softly in the living room as I stepped into my own kitchen. Brenda stood there, in my house, wearing what I swear was a power scarf. Holding court with a middle-aged couple like this was her personal mountain inn. "Told you the views were incredible," she purred. The previous owner had some unfortunate code issues, but the HOA stepped in to manage the property until it's legally transferred. "We maintain it for community benefit." Previous owner? Legally transferred? I had two thoughts at once. Firstly, this woman had gone completely feral, and secondly, I should definitely start recording. Phone out. Audio rolling. Then I rounded the corner into the living room. "Evening, folks," I said, casual as a home invasion. "Enjoying the place?" They looked up, startled. Brenda turned white, then red, then something resembling cosmic panic. "Jake, I didn't realize you'd be. I thought, weren't you having some difficulties?" "You mean the difficulty of someone stealing my home and treating it like a bed and breakfast?" The woman, Mrs. Henderson, I'd later learn, clutched her wine glass like a lifeline. "I'm sorry, we were told this was an HOA-owned unit." "Oh, it's not," I said, stepping further inside. "It's mine, registered, mortgaged, and very much not available for community timeshares." Brenda stammered. "Let's all calm down." "I am calm. You changed my locks, Brenda. You brought strangers into my home. You rented it out like you were flipping vacation properties on Craigslist." Brenda clutched her clipboard like a holy relic. "Jake, let's be reasonable. There are community precedents, guidelines, transitions of oversight." I barked a laugh. "You mean breaking and entering, wire fraud, and illegal subletting? Those guidelines." Mr. Henderson stood up slowly. "I think we've been misled. We'll be leaving now." "Good idea," I said. "Oh, and Mrs. Henderson, you'll want to ask Brenda for a full refund. And maybe contact your credit card company about the fraudulent charge." Brenda opened her mouth, probably to begin her ritual chant of community values, but I cut her off. "I've got video of you entering the cabin. I've got footage of you going through my mail. I've got audio of you claiming ownership of property that isn't yours. You've played HOA dictator long enough. Time for the real authorities." And that's when she snapped. "Fine," she shouted, face flushed. "You want the truth? Your cabin is going to be demolished anyway. This whole area is being redeveloped. You're just delaying the inevitable. I was trying to help you." The silence that followed was so deep you could hear her dreams of empire unravel. Bill, standing in the doorway with his GoPro, whistled low. "You got that on tape, right?" I nodded. Every word. And outside, tires crunched on gravel. The sheriff had arrived. Sheriff's deputies don't knock politely when the call is for breaking and entering. They announce themselves with the kind of firm door pounding that says, "We brought handcuffs, just in case." Brenda spun toward the door like a raccoon caught mid-trash dive. "I'll handle this," she muttered, as if she hadn't just screamed about bulldozing my property. I stayed put. The Hendersons wisely retreated to the porch, clutching their wine like wartime survivors. When the deputy stepped inside, I could see it in his eyes, the exact moment he realized he'd walked into an HOA soap opera. The kind where the villain wears a clipboard holster and drinks Chardonnay over stolen property. "I'm Deputy Larson. Who owns this residence?" he asked, looking between me and Brenda. I raised my hand. "Jake, property owner. I have ID, deed, and video of this woman entering without permission. Brenda stepped forward, smile plastered on like bad wallpaper. There's been a misunderstanding. The HOA is managing the property due to compliance issues while legal transitions are underway. Deputy Larson looked at her the way one looks at someone explaining they own the moon. Ma'am, do you have documentation proving the HOA has legal authority over this property? Brenda hesitated. Well, not formally, but as acting president. Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your identification, and I'd advise you to stop talking. Oh, how I savored those words. Bill stepped in next, GoPro still rolling like it was the finale of a reality show. I've got video too, Brenda entering this property multiple times while the owner was away. And she's been telling other neighbors he'd been relocated. I handed Deputy Larson my phone, already queued up with the golden footage of Brenda muttering about my fire pit and letting herself in with the community key. The deputy watched for 10 seconds before his face stiffened. We'll be needing the full recordings. Already uploaded to the cloud, I said. I've also filed a formal complaint with the county. She's filed multiple false code violations, likely to push homeowners into selling to a development company run by her sister-in-law. Brenda, realizing the clipboard was no longer Excalibur, started to tremble. Jake, she said, trying the old soft voice routine. Can't we just resolve this as neighbors? No need to escalate. No, Brenda, I said flatly. We're past neighborly. We're in felony territory now. You changed my locks, rented my home, entered without consent, and tried to cover it up with fake paperwork. You committed fraud, at minimum. The Hendersons returned, now fully Team Jake. We want our money back, Mrs. Henderson said, handing the deputy a paper trail of text messages and payment receipts. Mr. Henderson looked Brenda dead in the eye. You lied to us. You said this was HOA property. Deputy Larson radioed for backup. We're going to need someone from the DA's office to look at this paperwork. Brenda's facade cracked like cheap laminate under a space heater. You can't do this. She hissed at me as if this was somehow my betrayal. I smiled. You did this to yourself. With a clipboard, a wine glass, and a sense of entitlement bigger than your zoning violations. As the backup unit arrived, Brenda was escorted to her car, now being searched. Inside, a treasure trove, spare keys, files labeled with property owner names, printed maps of Pine Ridge, and a folder ominously labeled Resistant Properties. Guess who was on page 1? That night, she was taken into custody. And for the first time in months, my cabin was mine again. Quiet. Peaceful. No rule books on the porch. No HOA stormtroopers measuring my grass. Just me, the mountains, and the faint sound of justice echoing off the pines. If there's a sweeter sound than the clicking of handcuffs on someone who's made your life hell, I haven't heard it. Unless it's Brenda's voice cracking as she tried to convince sheriff's deputies that trespassing, fraud, and impersonating an HOA god were all part of her community stewardship program. Spoiler, they weren't buying it. But the clipboard queen's downfall was just getting started. Turns out, the sheriff's department loved my documentation. I handed over video files, time-stamped security footage, audio recordings, HOA emails that read like power-drunk manifestos, and a thumb drive titled Evidence of HOA Hellscape, Volume 1. Deputy Larson called me the next morning. We're escalating this to county prosecutors, he said. Your footage is airtight. Also, the property file she had in her car. There are 8 other addresses in Pine Ridge with the same pattern. Keys. Photos. Notes. Apparently, Brenda had keys to nearly a dozen properties, all conveniently labeled as under HOA oversight, which is like calling arson creative heat management. And the files? Not just notes about weeds and window blinds. These were detailed financial breakdowns of cabin owners. Who was retired? Who was behind on dues? Who had recently lost a spouse? Who might be pressured into selling? Oh, and tucked in her glove compartment was a neatly labeled manila envelope titled Morrison Mountain Project, Acquisition Timeline. It included a list of targeted properties, rough market values, projected acquisition dates, and, surprise, the logo of Morrison Mountain Properties, her sister-in-law's company. Because if you're going to run a criminal enterprise, why not keep a paper trail with a branded folder? Brenda wasn't just a rogue HOA president. She was the real estate equivalent of a sleeper agent, planted to poison the well and drive the town into forced redevelopment. And her clipboard? Basically a smoke bomb. Every violation, every fine, every ridiculous rule, it was all part of a coordinated campaign to make life miserable until people caved. The county opened a full investigation within 48 hours. The state attorney got involved a week later. And then, because karma has excellent timing, the Fed stepped in. See, once it became clear this wasn't a one-neighborhood scheme, the FBI started sniffing around. Brenda and Patricia had done this before, in 3 other rural communities across state lines. They perfected their model: infiltrate the HOA, abuse authority, file bogus complaints, scare people into selling, then flip the homes or resell the land to developers. Wire fraud? Check. Mail fraud? Oh yes. Conspiracy to commit real estate fraud across state lines? Ding ding ding. The news hit Pine Ridge like a snowstorm in July. Everyone had suspected Brenda was nuts, but no one had realized she was also running an organized crime ring with a pastel scarf and a passion for shrub height regulations. And the fallout was delicious. The HOA board had an emergency vote. 2 of the other members resigned immediately because, wouldn't you know it, they were also on Patricia's payroll. The community demanded a full bylaws rewrite, including term limits, recall procedures, and a ban on unscheduled property visits by any HOA representative not under court order. Patricia's real estate company? Frozen accounts. Investigations launched. Her smug face wiped off every flyer in a 60-mile radius. They even raided her office and found a whiteboard with handwritten notes about influencer campaigns to make redevelopment look like a local opportunity. As if turning someone's sanctuary into a glamping nightmare was a public service. And Brenda? She was indicted on multiple charges: conspiracy, mail and wire fraud, criminal impersonation, trespassing, and oh, a fun one: unauthorized duplication of security keys. Her legal team looked like they aged a decade just reading the list. I got a formal apology letter from the HOA, though it read more like a hostage note from a board trying not to be next. Meanwhile, I was back in my cabin. Same Adirondack chairs. Same fire pit. Same wind chimes Brenda hated so much they probably haunted her dreams in prison orange pajamas. And for the first time since she came into my life with a clipboard and a vision, I slept like a rock. 3 months after the night Brenda tried to stage a one-woman HOA coup, I sat on my deck, legs up, beer in hand, wind chimes swaying in defiant harmony, watching the sun sink behind the mountains. My phone buzzed with an update. Brenda Morrison had officially been sentenced. 18 months in a minimum security facility. Probation to follow. Fines totaling over $100,000. Her crimes? Conspiracy to commit fraud, trespassing, unauthorized property access, wire fraud, mail fraud, illegal rental operations, and impersonating a legal authority. Basically, she got the legal buffet. All you can indict. But it didn't stop there. Her sister-in-law, Patricia, struck a deal to avoid jail, but had to dissolve Morrison Mountain Properties and turn over all financial records. Which, shocker, revealed even more shady land grabs, inflated development contracts, and at least one proposal that described a peaceful cabin community as low-yield forest waste. Classy. As for Pine Ridge, the place finally started healing. We held new HOA elections, with actual transparency, real term limits, and enough oversight to make even the IRS jealous. Brenda's face was scrubbed from everything. No more pastel propaganda on bulletin boards. No more community newsletters that read like HOA fan fiction. The board issued an official repeal of every citation Brenda had issued over her ring, including mine. I got a formal apology letter, signed in black ink this time, a refund check for my $1,247 in fines, and a small settlement from the HOA's insurance for the illegal rental and property damage. I cashed that check and used part of it to buy a massive custom sign for my front porch. It read, "We reserve the right to refuse entry to anyone holding a clipboard." Tourists loved it. Locals loved it more. And the Hendersons? They ended up buying a different cabin a few roads over. We grab beers now and then and still laugh about their Airbnb nightmare turned FBI sting. They now refer to Brenda exclusively as she who shan't be named with a clipboard. But here's the best part. Remember Brenda's favorite accusation? That I was failing to maintain year-round occupancy standards? Well, I decided to overcorrect. I made my cabin my permanent residence, installed fiber internet, built a new home office overlooking the valley, got a dog named Django who barks whenever someone walks within 100 feet of the property, especially if they're holding a binder or wearing salmon-colored cardigans. Pine Ridge became peaceful again. The HOA returned to its roots, community potlucks, shoveling driveways, and not spying on wind chimes like they were weapons of mass disruption. And Brenda? Well, last I heard, she was requesting early release for community reintegration. The community voted unanimously to block her from stepping foot in Pine Ridge again. I believe the actual wording was, let her reintegrate somewhere else. Justice didn't just come. It rented a cabin, toasted by the fireplace, and laughed at the clipboard burning in the fire pit. So now, when people ask me about my cabin, I just smile. I say it's where I found peace, purpose, and definitive proof that wind chimes and petty tyrants don't mix. Because at the end of the day, I didn't just get my cabin back. I got my sanity, my space, and the rare, wonderful satisfaction of watching karma show up in uniform, with backup, evidence, and a clipboard of its own. But this clipboard? That one was used to press charges. Thank you for being with us. Please share in the comments where you are watching from and whether you liked everything, and see you next time.